The world of a football manager is one of hoping daddy doesn't fire me, because if there's one thing that the past has proved, it's that no matter your success, you're one loss to Everton away from being sacked in the tunnel. And the latest instalment of, well, why has he done that then, is Julian Nagelsmann. The German is currently sitting 1 point from the top of the Bundesliga, a quarter-final in the Champions League, beating Barcelona and PSG in the process, and only conceding 2 goals in the competition. And yet, Bayern's board have decided to give the 35-year-old the tic-tac, or as they say in German, does tic-tac. The world is once again shocked by the sacking of a seemingly elite coach doing an elite level job just 2 months away from a possible Champions League final. Bayern fans haven't been this confused looking at a situation since their manager dressed up as an optical illusion. So today I wanted to go back through 5 more shocking sackings that confuse the world of football. Number 5, Jupp Heynckes. Being sacked in Munich after doing a great job seems to not be a one-time thing, as in 2013 Jupp Heynckes may have been forced from his position the same year his team completed a historic treble. Heynckes was considered an all-time great at Bayern Munich due to his building of a formidable squad who all contributed towards being crowned the best team in Europe. Franz Beckenbauer even described Jupp's side as the best Bayern side ever. However, speculation over Heynckes' future and whether or not he wanted to retire in the coming years quickly unsettled the board. The German decided to retire that year, saying, "I have no intention of coaching again. I had a worthy ending," in an interview with Der Spiegel. But later that year, Bayern president Uli Hoeneß was quoted as saying, "We informed Jupp early on that we were in contact with Pep. Of course, he would have liked to continue another year," leaving fans confused as to whether in fact it was the board that pushed the coach into retirement rather than trying to keep the genius around in Munich. Either way, Bayern seemed all too content with letting a true legend go so quickly after historical success, but I guess the next man lined up didn't do too bad either. Number 4, Carlo Ancelotti. Perhaps one of the most memorable sackings in recent times was handed to Carlo Ancelotti, showing no matter your capabilities, you best not lose to Everton. The Italian's debut in London was a brilliant one, securing a double for the Blues, winning both the FA Cup and the Premier League in the 2009-10 season. However, his second season, surprise, surprise, didn't live up to the first, finishing trophyless and second in the league. So almost a year on from delivering one of Chelsea's greatest ever seasons, following a 1-0 loss to Everton, Ancelotti was sacked in the tunnel, which was the second worst thing to happen to him at Goodison Park, just behind having to go to Goodison Park. The ruthless nature of Chelsea's owners was clear to see, and a second place finish was simply not good enough. The sacking came as a shock to the entire Premier League, and perhaps even more so when he was swiftly replaced by Andre Villas-Boas, one of Chelsea's worst ever managers. Number 3, Nigel Adkins. It turns out it's not just the big boys that get a little restless when things start to get difficult. Despite Southampton achieving back-to-back promotions, reaching the Premier League in 2011, the club's owner Katharina Leonhardt still had a wandering eye in the managerial world. Nigel Adkins was the master behind the 2 promotions, and as he and his team sat in 15th in the Premier League, many fans looked at the Saints as a stable First Division side. Adkins had built a great relationship with the fans and a team that they could get behind, boasting many players that went on to become household Premier League names, such as Adam Lallana, Nathaniel Klein, Gaston Ramirez and Luke Shaw. But despite a team that the streets are yet to forget, Southampton would soon leave behind their manager. After a thrilling Desmond with Chelsea, like my overweight dad trying to become a ballerina, a 2-2 wasn't good enough. Nigel Adkins was sacked in the wake of the game, coming to a shock to the entire city. A man that had cemented his name into South Coast history was brutally fired, as the owners had their sights already set on a man named Mauricio Pochettino, and we all know what happened after that. And either way, I'm going to tell you. Number 2, Mauricio Pochettino. The Argentine spent 5 seasons in North London, achieving 4 consecutive top 4 finishes and even a Champions League final. Despite losing the final going into their next season, there was huge optimism that the club could push on even further, but Daniel Levy had other plans. Pochettino was sacked just 12 games into the season. Looking at their league position, reaction, it may have not seemed so rash, but the handling of the situation seems so strange. Amazon were filming one of their fly on the wall, all or nothing documentaries at the time, and Mr. Levy didn't seem too happy with the nothing part of that title being the main part of the show. But the sacking was barely featured at all in the documentary, confusing fans as it was a seismic shift in the club's history. The owners were clearly fed up with the lack of trophies at the club, and yet their previous transfer history seemed to say otherwise, opting for a £1 billion stadium for Rihanna and go-karting rather than any new players, and Poch was left to galvanise the same squad once again. The club had become so much more stable under the watchful eye of the Argentine and became a constant figure in the top 4 places throughout his time there, and yet the club decided to leave Captain Smooth behind as soon as things got rough. Number 1, Vicente del Bosque. Florentino Perez in football is like a homophobe in a rugby changing room. Quite frankly, we're all uncomfortable he's been allowed in, and boy did he stick his finger in it in 2003. After recently being re-elected at Real Madrid, he was keen to make his mark on the club once again, and that came in the shape of a sudden sacking of manager at the time, Vicente del Bosque. Del Bosque had a 4-year trophy-filled spell in Madrid, winning 2 La Liga titles and 2 Champions Leagues in the early 2000s, but tensions were running high between the two Spaniards. There was the beginning of a power struggle at Madrid, with Bosque becoming increasingly frustrated with the transfer policy, and reports that his measured demeanour did not fit the Perez vision of a manager he wanted. So just days after Real Madrid secured their 2nd Champions League under the man in the Dolmio adverts, Perez without hesitation sacked the manager and sent Bosque and his exquisite moustache out of football management. The sacking shocked the world. The biggest club on the planet had just sacked at the time their 2nd most successful manager ever with seemingly no reason, proving that no matter how successful you are at any football club in the world, you're one lunatic billionaire away from being sent back to scrolling through LinkedIn and probably being replaced by Andre Villas-Boas.